Good morning. It's great to see all of you. I am still Porter Anderson after all of these sessions on this stage. I am the editor in chief of Publishing Perspectives. It's great to have all of you joining us and some of you rejoining us. Thank you. This is the second in our series of executive talks here in the Publishing Perspectives Forum, which we're very happy to have in the studio here because we have such great privacy and quiet as we talk together to some very important and terrific people, one of whom you're about to meet. This is Véronique Cardi. She is the CEO of JC Lattès in Paris. That is a Hachette house. And I will tell you that one of the great things about our conversations together is not only are they fun all of the time, but we always get to marketing somehow. This is a marketing genius here. She's doing very, very interesting things and understands how and why they work or why they don't. You will learn a lot from her as we go. So we are going, by the way, just so that you know, we will break at 12:15, just so that we can get Véronique back onto the train to Paris. So if it seems that we're stopping slightly earlier than you thought, you're right, we are, but for a very good reason. Now, would you just start us at the beginning, Véronique, just by telling us a little bit about JC Lattès? What is the emphasis for the house?
So thank you for being here and for listening to me. JC Lattès is indeed one of the literary publishing house within Hachette group. It's actually the youngest publishing house. You know, Fayard, Kalman Levy, Grasset, Stock, Livres de Poche are older than we are. Right. But of course, we are as talented as the other publishing houses. The team is amazing. JC Lattès actually publishes altogether big best-selling authors such as Dan Brown, John Grisham, Patricia Cornwell, E.L. James, and top quality literary French authors such as Sandrine Collette, who won Goncourt des Lycéens last year, Nina Bouraoui, Adèle Bréau, phenomenal success as well with Olivia Ruiz, who was translated all around the world. So foreign fiction, French fiction, also non-fiction, which ranges from Britney Spears' memoir to ex-Prime Minister Edouard Philippe essays, so wide range. And this variety allows us to adjust to the reader's tastes, which are very different, of course.
Of course. And tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you come to be in the position you're in? Where did you come from to be in the spot you're in now?
So I entered the group about 10 years ago. So I used to run Le Livre de Poche, Hachette mass market paperback publisher, #1 of the mass market paperback market. And before that, I created a small publishing house in the other group, Éditions, called Les Escales. So I come from foreign fiction. Le Livre de Poche allows me to discover how to fuel life into backlists, you know, this very dynamic backlist in France. And I must say, I also run Éditions du Masque, you know, which is French first publishing house dedicated to crime literature, where indeed we fuel life into Agatha Christie's backlist. Agatha Christie never knows the crisis, actually. So that is also part of my job.
Very interesting. There's a house so much like yours in New York, Soho Press, has in fact given great success to crime in an imprint that they created themselves. And it's fascinating for us in the United States, as it may be in France as well, because we think of the United Kingdom being the high throne of crime drama, right? And then you have the Nordics. But in the States, this is still new. It's not quite the excessively interesting genre that it's becoming. So it's nice to see it growing, you know? How is it in France? Are they hot for crime, or is that still coming along?
So actually, at Éditions du Masque, as I mentioned, Agatha Christie is still so strong because it's studied in schools, for example. So it's really classics as learned in classes. Cozy crime used to be big. We also the French publisher of Richard Osman, who, as you might know, is huge in the UK. But it starts to, lower the trend of the cozy crime. Of course, in France, as in other countries, the big phenomenon is Freda McFadden. But lately, we had this really big launch for the new Dan Brown's book in France, and so #1 during a month, and that was quite exciting.
Right. And I must say, we always have to thank you to Agatha Christie, wherever she is, because I started life as an actor in the theater, and we would always do very dangerous Ionesco work, and then we would do Agatha Christie to pay for it, right? The audience would come right in. It's great to have dependable material like that. Now, having mentioned Dan Brown, would you start us off? This will help you understand the marketing mind that I'm telling you about, by talking to us a little bit about going to Prague and the preparations that you and the house have made, that your team is working on to work with Dan.
Indeed, because it has been quite a waiting, because usually Dan Brown, so he used to publish a book every 3-4 years. This time he skipped one. So we've been waiting for this new book for 8 years, which means that, of course, we have to be up to the fans, Dan Brown's fans, readers waiting, but also to recruit new readers, because Da Vinci Code was published 20 years ago, the Origin 8 years ago. So, of course, we had to reinvent the ways in which we wanted to reach out the readers with Dan Brown. And as influencers have become so crucial to our market, but as I used to say, influencers are crucial, but they don't want to be influenced by and controlled by the publisher. So we have really to offer them genuine experiences, which was the case with Dan Brown, because indeed, so there were 3 steps, 3 times of promotion, the day of publication, of course, where we organized this secret party dedicated only to influencers in a secret place in Paris. Actually, they were inviting, not knowing if it was for a book or for the new series. And we reproduced the set of the book in the underground of Prague, a secret lab, and then had this trailer. And at the end of the trailer, you were not invited to discover the new Netflix series, but the new Dan Brown. So we wanted to create a bookbuster, like the blockbuster. So this was the first part of our strategy. Then, of course, the opportunity to bring them with us to Prague. I mean, this was the first time I was coming to an international launch, not only with journalists, but with influencers. So we organized City of Secrets tour of Prague to go with them on the places that were mentioned, of course, in the book. And there were also dedicated moments with Dan, each of them. So there were influencers from all around the world, which was quite exciting. And they each had a moment with Dan. And it was also a secret journey through cocktails, I must say, because they were offered cocktails that were mentioned in the books. So this was the second part. And then the last part was, of course, when Dan came to Paris. We had this stage event in beautiful Salle Cortot, which also hosts École Nationale de Musique, so with genius piano players from all around the world. And he offered us this wonderful moment, playing as an avant-première a part of the soundtrack he's composing himself for the adaptation of the Secret of Secrets series. So he played the piano for us, and influencers were enthralled by this?
I'm just going to drop all of stuff I'm doing and become an influencer. This is much too nice to get a trip like that. That's incredible. It must be interesting to work with them too, because we're surrounded here by trade visitors. At this time of week here at Frankfurt, this is the profession, this is the industry that we're talking with, and all of us understand and know marketing. We talk about it in many different ways all the time, sometimes not very nice, but we talk about marketing all the time. And yet, when you work with the influencers, they're a very different kind of person, aren't they?
Actually, that's what
How much do they know, I think is what I'm asking, you know?
Yeah,
do they understand?
And the idea was, of course, not to force them to talk about Dan Brown,
Right.
but to discover how Dan Brown, who used to be in the bookshops for 20 years,
Right.
can offer them a wonderful experience, reading experience and publishing experience with the team. I must say that the whole campaign, actually for Dan Brown, the advertising campaign was also focused on a defense on book and on reading. For example, our claim for the bus campaign and subway campaign, the claim was the book that will put your running TV series on hold.
Wow.
So the idea was to defend that reading is as immersive, as sexy as a TV series or a podcast.
Right. That's a very nice line too, because of course what we've seen, if anything, in the United States, we're becoming concerned that so many of our reading programs have been for young people. Nothing wrong with that. We need them reading, but we've forgotten the adults who have wandered off to the series, right? And they're now watching everything on television. This is a lovely way to do it, to say this will put that on hold for you. You'll get that drawn in, you know, which is what Dan's books do anyway. But I think it's wonderful to do that, because in a way you can expand that to a wider range of audience perhaps than the younger people whom we usually target with our reading programs, yeah?
Indeed, and actually, it's up to us. I'm convinced that it's up to us publishers to show indeed that reading is as immersive as it used to be, even though new leisures appear, and to reinvent again the ways in which we reach out to readers. So, for example, at Lattès, we became experts on organizing musical reading tours. So, for example, as I mentioned, for Olivier Riz, who is a famous French singer. So, to cross cultural worlds, you know, music, book, and which might, and it worked actually, which attracts an audience that might otherwise not venture into bookshop, you know, so to have these musical readings. We also experienced this year new scented readings about this debut novel by Paul Richardot, Fragrantia, an olfactory thriller in the vein of Patrick Zuskind Perfume.
Right.
So it was published at the beginning of the year, and we organized this fragrant reading as is a specialist of perfume industry. So, you know, to find new ways to talk to the readers, offer genuine experience about reading, around reading.
I think this is fascinating. The first one of these that Véronique told me about was the Fragrantia piece. And the idea of the audience coming, and apparently, as I understand it, during the piece, he actually releases various scents.
Scents, right? And make the audience guess what scent it was, actually.
Wow. Oh, that's wonderful. You know, this kind of event marketing is very exciting. And I think, if anything, I think there's a lot for us to learn in many of our markets right now about exactly what you're saying, because as soon as you walk into the realm of events, you are working with another part of their lives, something else they're interested in, not just the book, but as a matter of fact, something they know and like, and it's drawing them to the event, and they're having an amazing experience, and of course they want the book. So did it sell well? I mean, did this
actually
work out?
It sold well, and Fragrantia was sold all around the world, you know, in 10 countries.
Right.
So,
but as a result of your events, were you able to actually see?
Yeah, and I must say, it's also sold to be a series. So again, even though we want books to put on hold the running TV series, then TV adaptations are always good to
Right.
make discover books again. You know,
Oh,
in
yeah.
France, for example, the big movies, Le Comte de Monte Cristo, Les Trois Mousquetaires, helped to make Alexandre Dumas discover again.
Right.
So everything nourishes.
Springtime for Dumas. Imagine that, but there you are. Now, I think this is fascinating, and I think it's exciting because it enlivens what probably we all get into ruts at times about how books are sold, and you have your list, and you're working the list and everything. And one of the things we've talked about, though, is the blockbusters, as we're saying here, the ones that are so strong, the Dan Browns who come in, and even for Garcia at its point. How do you handle the mid list? How do you handle something below it
So
that's
this
really
is actually
valuable?
the biggest challenge
Yeah.
because sales in France and in other countries, I'm pretty sure, are like an hourglass, you know?
Right.
More and more books selling less and less, and fewer books selling more and more. So you have to cope with those blockbusters. Of course, when you're the publisher, that's the you played the game. But of course, to defend and to support the mid list is the biggest challenge for us. We have to be inventing. We have to discover new voices. We have to support the booksellers. In France, thanks to the legislative framework, you know, the law on the single fixed price of book, we have the biggest density of bookshops, 3,500 bookshops in France, only 700 in Paris. So thanks to these very strong booksellers network, we can still discover new voices, debut novelists, and so on.
I think that's fascinating, and it's wonderful that you do have that pool of salesmanship to work with. And of course, you have the rentrée, which, as I understand, at some points the booksellers are yelling about because it's too many new things coming in at once. Yes, is that still a
So
conversation?
that's same old story. Indeed, in France, we have this rentrée littéraire.
Yeah.
So just after summer, when people buy and read books, you have 500 books published at the same time when
Yeah.
when all the French people are back to work. So which is a paradox. Still, it is a period when a time when books are under the spotlight during months, thanks to also the literary prizes, and of course those prizes definitely boost the sales when you're the lucky winner of those prizes. But for example, so as I mentioned last year, Madeleine avant l'aube by Sandrine Colette won the Goncourt des lycéens.
Right.
It was awarded at the very end of November 28 to be precise. And we had sold at the time 70,000 copies, and now we've sold, thanks to the prize, 250,000 copies. So, you know, makes a difference. Sandrine Colette was also very strongly supported by the bookseller, so who supported us until now. She's still in the bestseller lists. And so Rentrée littéraire is indeed very a tough time with many books and fewer books that took opportunity of this time, but still allows the phenomenon.
It's interesting what you're talking about too, because you know Sophie de Closet, I'm sure. Yeah, we were talking in Venezia, as a matter of fact, where you and I met quite a while ago. And one of the problems that she said that she was noticing at that time, I don't know that this is still recent for her, but she would see that when you looked at the mid list and you had some very strong people there who in a way were waiting for their moment to really be caught and maybe by a prize, right? And captured and brought up into the spotlight. If they felt, because of the intensity of the French market, if they felt that they weren't getting as much attention as they wanted to have from the house, they would leave and go to another publisher. Now, all of us see this happen. At times, somebody walks across the street. This is understood. But this was actually becoming quite a problem at one point for several of the publishers because they were seeing people who were without patience if on their very first book, and no matter how good it really was, you couldn't push it over the kind of line they were looking for, out they went. And do you see this? Do you think it may be more common in France, perhaps?
Oh,
Than
not more common in
no?
France. I
Okay.
mean, an author wants to have success,
Oh yeah.
to get all the attention. Otherwise, he would do something else than
Right.
writing, of course, he or
Right.
she.
Right.
But the case of Sandrine Colette, and for example, this year, the case of John Boyne, you know,
Yeah.
who, so it's the 7 books by him were published. He had this phenomenal success in the young adult side with The Boy in White Striped Pajamas. And then on the adult side of his work, we started publishing him with The Invisible Furries of the Heart, like more than a decade ago. And now he starts to have the success he deserves. The Elements won Prix du Roman Fnac. We have sold quite many copies. So, you know, this is the way writers have to be patient, and I completely understand that it's not easy, but of course, when you feel that the whole team is dedicated to make you progress at each book and get the attention, the most of the attention, we're trying to do our best. But it's difficult.
It is difficult, and of course, you're right. I mean, this is happening everywhere. I think that from the outside, we look at the intensity of your market and we think, well, every level of it must be more keenly felt. But not necessarily. I mean, New York can be a very big hothouse when it's time for everybody to get what they want. And they all are Dan Brown in their own minds, of course, just as we all are. And it's a fascinating thing to me to see. Another thing that Sophie had mentioned, and it's something that you and I have touched on too, is that at the point she was handed Fayard, at that point, she was moving into that company, she found she had 35 very fine editorial employees, every one of them a woman. And she looked around the room, you know, and she said to herself, well, these are all great people. They're doing beautiful work. But what if I want to get a guy to read a book? And we don't have anything, and we don't have any guys acquiring any books, and nothing's coming in. It seems to be a conversation that's getting started in several markets now. I know in the States we're talking about this, somewhat in the UK we're talking about this. The fact that there is a dearth for men and boys, particularly during some crises that they're experiencing in many societies, that would bring contemporary literature to them in a way that could help them with what they're going through in life. Are you seeing this?
So actually, at Lattès, I must say that 2 of our 5 editorial directors are men. So that's something we're preoccupied about. Damien Bergeret is in charge of the nonfiction at Éditions Lattès, and with Maya Guven, we launched this fiction imprint called La Grenade, dedicated to new voices and diversity. So that's definitely on my mind, you know, to be cautious of if you want to not to lose boys and men's readership, you also have to be able to put in on their place. And of course, worrying figures in France as everywhere in the world. You know, for example, boys aged between 16 and 19 spend 7 minutes on reading a book and 5 hours a day, 7 minutes a day, and 5 hours on screen. So that's preoccupying. And but that's very interesting because I was just in the agent center talking with an agent who talked to me about this lit RPG new literature. It means literature, role play gamers, so dedicated to boys, and most boys and men playing video games. And now there is a specific trend of literature dedicated to them. So see, the publishing world is creative and is constantly trying to find new ways to reach every reader.
Yeah, I think this is very smart. And I should follow up what I've just said, by the way, by saying, as I always try to say to any audience in publishing, we want every woman. They're doing a beautiful job. It's incredible. We're locking the doors. Nobody gets out. It's just in some cases, in the United States, it's about 80% women in the workforce. We need more of them on the top floor, where you are. We need more CEOs who are women in the executive suites. But we also need some men to come in, and it becomes a new way of thinking of diversity. When you hire, you might have to think about, let's get some guys in here, because in some places it's become thin on the ground with what they can do. Some of this, of course, in the States comes from some rather serious problems too. Boys and the younger men are about 4 times more likely to commit suicide right now. And so it's actually a very serious problem, and it reminds you of the period when girls were worried about body image and really having a difficult time as they were moving into their formative years. And suddenly we saw publishing step forward with books about great women of history. And you can be an astronaut, and you know, really did a beautiful job in that regard. And I'd love to see that for guys, you know.
And in France, I think actually boys and men, of course, the readership for crime and thrillers, they are strong in this among those readers. And again, to find them where they are. Boys and men as well. For example, we tried this with our famous thriller duo, Giacometti-Raven, you know, to find the potential readers where they are. Maybe on the video game, we made this advertising inside the video game. So in a video game with vampire and witches and so on. And one of their book was about the witches and vampire during the World War II. Very quite fascinating. So we put advertising inside the video game. So
very smart.
Trying to fight against this disaffection with reading among boys and men, maybe
and
as well.
As you say, play them where they lie. Just go to what they're doing, and come into it. I think that sounds fantastic. It's wonderful to hear that this is something you're thinking about. Another thing that in many of our markets, including right here in Germany, a great deal of conversation going on now, has to do with the exports of English, particularly with the Dan Brown, for example, where a lot of people are interested in reading an originally English piece that's coming in from another market, and they're ready to read it no matter what their own language is in English. We saw this early in the Netherlands, for example. Now it seems to be spreading through many of the countries, particularly of Europe. And it puts you as a publisher of French, even in a place where I think of the language being so wonderfully important, people look at you in France and say, good God, here comes an English book, and they want to read it in English, yes? Yeah.
And
how do you handle this?
That's a phenomenon, a new thing I noticed when publishing Britney Spears' memoir, because actually I noticed that it was a worldwide publication, so we published simultaneously with the original version, the French version, but then I noticed on the social media some influencers, again, posting, so for some French influencers, posting pictures and videos with the original version, The Woman in Me. So I was like, okay, so now we're not gaining readers on that. Because I think it was more trendy to have the original version for those readers. So that is becoming a thing, a new challenge for us as well, which indeed forces us to be always to stick to the original publication date. So for Dan Brown, this is organized, but you know, not for every foreign fiction, foreign title we are publishing, this is possible. And that's, you mentioned the Netherlands, and I remember that at the time I used to work at Éditions Plomb Feu Croisé. We published The Goldfinch by by Donatart in France, and actually the Netherlands published were the only one publishing simultaneously to the American version, and we were maybe weeks later, because of course it was such a big book, The Goldfinch, and I think it wouldn't be possible now, you know. To let too much time the original version only to be available, because of course original versions are also flowering on the bookshelves of horror booksellers. You know, French booksellers tend to have now dedicated bookshelves for the original versions, so that is a new challenge.
Yeah, I saw this in Denmark when I was living in Copenhagen. Because Danish is a very small language. Of course, there are, I think, 5 million Danes in the world, as a matter of fact. And they have been exposed to so much English entertainment. They're watching the films, they're seeing the television series and all, that most of the younger people speak very fine English. And they were, even when I was there, this was quite a number of years ago, they were taking the English originals as soon as they could get them. It does change your rights structure a little bit, though, right? I mean, you have to think about, how are we going to approach this in terms of right sales and transactions? Because you're either going to need to co-publish, perhaps, to go into an English edition of your own, or what else is there? I mean, what is the best way, you think, to handle this?
So actually, we are not publishing English. Of course,
You're not publishing your own English.
No. We are not. We're only publishing French fiction or French translated,
and you publish
foreign translated fiction.
Right.
So this is the original version are going through completely different networks, you know, sales networks, but still has to be on our mind.
Felicitas von Lovenberg and I have been talking about this from people, because they were, at least at one point when we last spoke about this, looking at actual co-publishing editions, saying, we will do your English, you know, let us come with that at the same time that something would go out in German, which can be a very good way to approach it too, particularly when you want that simultaneous publication effect, so that somebody doesn't run to another edition than what you're offering in the language. It is tricky though, and the simultaneity and the speed to market that's needed in so many things has become interesting too. One of the areas I wanted to bring up before we're done here with you is the question of digital formats in France, because we've seen, at least from what the outside appeared to us to be a rather slow uptake in digital.
Yeah.
And this goes all the way back to ebooks and then even to audiobooks. What we see in some of the advanced digital markets, like my market, the Scandinavians for sure, is that they want the audio immediately. They want it to drop right with the very first edition in print. And that's probably not the case in France, right?
Actually, that's what my colleague Laure Saget, wonderful general manager of Audiolib, is trying to do more. This was less the case, and now, for example, for this rentrée littéraire, and of course for Dan Brown, the audio version was immediately available. The same for example, John Boyne. So she's trying to indeed push the simultaneous publication, and audio books are gaining popularity and market shares in France, growing slower than other markets, of course, again, because of this structure where French people are still very interested in holding a physical book and in going to the bookshop and see what the bookseller would recommend. So the physical object is still very strong, and ebooks and audiobooks are growing slower than, of course, in the UK, US, and in Germany, as far as I know. But simultaneous publications of every format is definitely what we are trying to do.
That's great. That's real interesting, too. I spoke with John Watt and Sabine Kramer yesterday here on audio. We were talking about some of these questions and how you approach something like this, because if you are looking for a chance to get something out very quickly, you may have to have the new format ready. But AI is beginning to complicate this too, of course, because AI can, a synthesized voice is primarily what we mean when we talk about AI related to audio. When you've got that availability, particularly if you have a famous voice, and it's stored up. It's been synthesized and collected, and then it can be made to do a reading with the stars, the celebrities' permission, of course. Once that's being done, everything goes faster. The thing can be done. You don't have to
Yeah,
hire
actually,
the voice
that's
artist and whatnot, right?
actually the value of having the author, if he is famous or not, if he or she is famous or not, is definitely what Audiolib, I think, is trying to make. So, for example, Feurat Talani, one of our French gems of the rentrée littéraire, we published Le ciel est immense. He read his own audio version, so as to be, and it was available at the publication date of the physical edition.
Right.
So to have the author read his own book,
Right.
for, of course, in the case of Feurat Talani, as the plot is set between Iraq and the Soviet Union during the 70s, it was good to have his voice pronouncing a few of the Arabic words.
Right.
Still quite important to have the author's voice reading, or famous comedian. I know that in the US, for example, I can't remember what, I think Julia Roberts read, because we published Lisa Marie Plesser's memoir as well, and I think she read the version, so that was like fantastic.
Yep.
So to have a human, famous or intimate voices reading their audio books is not, it is useful.
Yeah, yeah. We find this has got a lot of traction, not least because it's something I think we mentioned yesterday too in our session. So you're going to hear me say the same thing for a moment. But in audio, as AI is developing it, there is a very good chance that soon a reader who buys the audiobook can listen, and if what's called the narrator, I disagree with that term. I think it's a voice artist. But if you're hearing the person read the book and it does not sound like you want it to, you can ask for another voice. You can get another dialect. You can get another accent. You can get another age group. I need to hear somebody younger read this to me. This sounds too old. I think that would make audio appeal to more people, because too often it's that voice that might be a barrier to enjoying the audiobook. Other times it's fantastic because you love the voice. But I think that as we get those capabilities, as long as we remember the primacy of the human reader, who, just like a star, can store up his or her voice and be paid for whenever that's being used for a new book. If we remember the best readers are the human readers working in material, I think we can expand the interest in audio this way as it goes. Not that it's not already selling well in many markets, but it's quite a different animal from the ebook, which of course is basically print transferred into a digital transmission. And so I think there's a lot more room for experimentation in audio. It will be interesting. We should get back in 5 years and join each other on stage again and see where audio is in France at that time. It surprised me. I'm a personal convert in that I thought I don't think I want to hear audio all the time. I like it very much now. And I think it will grow on people as its capabilities are expanded to go. This is such a great conversation. I think we've hit most of our notes. Is there something that you'd like to talk to us about, that you want to bring forward?
We concerning AI, this is always a question we've been faced to. What use of AI are we practicing in our publishing houses? As many of my fellow publishers, we are not using AI for creative or editorial use, only for marketing purpose. And I must say I had this quite funny anecdote, because last year when we were supposed to try to use AI, we were trying new devices, new AI devices, and I thought it was good to try, for example, Madeleine avant l'aube, which I mentioned earlier, through this device. And so I asked the robot, literally, how what he thinks, of course, of this text, how he it would sum it up, how it would talk about it. And soon I realized actually that the robot didn't understand that who was the narrator of the first part, because in Madeleine avant l'aube there is a narrative twist, actually, which makes all the flavor also of this reading. And so actually the robot, and I asked him or her, so I asked it, are you sure this is the narrator is a young boy anyway? Yes, he's with a talent for observation, you know, and it was not the case. So definitely a human reader is still useful to consider manuscripts and to work on the text we want to publish. And we also just published a book by Marion Carré with a young artist and a specialist of AI. Sam Altman just mentioned in a conference her job at Château de Versailles, where when you go through the gardens or the chateau, you have voices talking about the objects and rooms and so on.
Is that the museum when you have a
museum?
Guide? Yeah, those
and
are nice.
Actually, we just published one of her books entitled "The Moving Walkway." The moving walkway being AI. So AI is supposed, and indeed accelerates our process, maybe our creativity. But of course, as a moving walkway, it sends us all in the same direction at the same speed. So, you know, instead of making us more creative, it also makes us a bit more predictive. So she recommends in this book to use the to turn the moving walkway into a running machine. So to go, you know, against the current, to straighten your brain and your creativity. And I thought that this image was what I wanted to do in publishing.
That's very nice. I love the concept. I think that's great. And I think that's a very good example of the kind of thing that we can expect to think of and see tried and be able to give some evaluation to, because it's a nice thing to see an energy as long as it doesn't eat us alive, as we're afraid that generative AI might do. But if we can harness this thing to actually bring new developments like that into place, it's great. We need that to help make sure that we are selling the books. That is the game. So this has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it. I think we'll get you to your train on time.
Yes, thank you.
I hope so. I want to thank all of you, too.
Except if we have a question, of course.
Yeah, well, there you go. No, I want to thank all of you for being here as well and joining us. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., our third and final executive talk of the week will be with Christian Schumacher-Gebler. You may know him. Bonnier, Germany, is going to be with us. He's terrific. He has magnificent insights into how things are working in the German market with that Bonnier edge to it, that slightly outside observation. It's fascinating. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that too. And thank you, Veronique.
Thank you, Porter,
it's just great to have you.
All.